Hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing on with our library tour, and we're in the two bookcases that are inside the old bricked up fireplace. We're working on bookcase number 2 now. We're starting on that. And what I've been doing is doing the outside books first, the books that are stacked on the outside, blocking the books on the shelf. But I noticed when I looked at this one only has these on the front. These are the beautiful Ace run of Frank Herbert Dune novels that the folks at Ace were kind enough to send me. I'm doing Dune Tube for the rest of the year. They didn't know that, but I didn't know it either when I asked. But I think these things are lovely, which feels like a little bit of heresy since I very much venerated the artist, the traditional artist for Dune covers. But that was the only thing on the front here, so we're just going to forge ahead to the books on the shelves and see if we can get through the whole shelf, and then we'll move on from there. So this first one is a thing called Literary Genius. It's edited by Joseph Epstein. It's got really nice illustrations by Barry Moser, and it is just a bunch of the literary, bloviators of the day writing about literary bloviators of other days. So you have, for instance, there's David Bromwich on Samuel Johnson, and you've got illustrations all throughout, not only author photos or author profiles, but also spot illustrations. Barry Moser's really good at spot illustrations, and they are all throughout this thing. I think that's the reason that I kept it, because it's such a pleasant volume. There's nothing in it that I don't, there's nothing in it about the authors that I don't already know, and there's nothing in it about the writers on the authors that I don't already know they think, because from reading them elsewhere. I just like the product, that's all. It's fun to go through. Okay, this next one is a novel, so, obviously my novels aren't all together. This is John Ray, and this is Godsend. And as you can tell from the cover design, this is the author of Lowboy, a novel that I very, very much like. I also very much like this one, about a young woman who goes to Pakistan and flirts with radicalization. And I thought it was a very different book than Lowboy, very different. John Ray actually hits a different tonal register with all of his novels, now that I think about it. Each one of them is a different experience from the others, despite the publisher's decision, I think a wise one, to make this kind of sort of look like Lowboy. So I highly recommend it. I don't even know if Godsend is out in paperback yet, but it shouldn't be here. It should be. I should have a whole bookcase of contemporary fiction that I'm holding on to. Okay, I guess this will be one of those things. This is one of you sent me this. You saw it and you thought, you have to send this to Steve. This is by Gain Young, and it is Theodore Roosevelt, Sasquatch Hunter. And I read it, of course, in a shot. It's like 60 pages long. And Roosevelt hunted everything. And he also met a man who told him a very credible story about a Sasquatch sighting. But to the best of my knowledge, he never hunted one himself. Or I think we'd have a carcass in the American Museum of Natural History if that were so. Okay, this is the paperback of Matthias Bostrom's From Holmes to Sherlock. Has a glowing blurb from yours truly on the back. It is a fantastic story about Sherlock Holmes as a fictional creation. On the page, in pastiche fiction, on the stage, on big screen, and stories about the men and women who worked behind the scenes, and the men who played Holmes, strikes a perfect balance between sober history and industry gossip, so that you're not bored by the one and you're not scandalized by the other. It's delightful, an absolutely delightful book. If you see it as a paperback in your bookstore and you're interested in Sherlock Holmes, and you've somehow missed it, and then you should grab it. Okay, this is another piece of contemporary fiction. This is Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald. This is and it's full of stuff. It's full of paperwork. I have never been a big fan of this author, mainly because I thought that he was in the cadre of non-American authors who are held up by Brooklyn idiots, by hipster Brooklyn idiots, as real literature. And they don't do it because they're fans of Sebald or Marquez or Calvino or Kundera, especially Kundera. They don't do it because they're fans of these authors at all. They do it to short-circuit a conversation in which they would otherwise be revealed as frauds because they're at a dinner party or a book launch, and they're putting themselves forward as a literary person without having read any George Eliot, without having read all of Dickens, without having read any Anthony Trollope, without having read any Sterne or any Thackeray. They know that. They know that. On some level, they're as me sainted Ma would have said, they're full of what makes the grass grow. But they do know on some level that they're frauds. And rather than sit and read those works, which are greater than they are, harder than they are, their flimsy little brains would have to work really hard, and they've never had to do that. They've been hothouse flowers since the first time they were able to tell a glib lie in junior high. So rather than do that, what they do is pick names of authors that they've maybe sampled, but that they know aren't canonical, and just sort of put them forward. And the gambit at those parties and at those launches and whatnot, the gambit, usually unspoken, or sometimes they speak it out, right? The gambit is, the canon is constantly evolving. I can't believe you could be so small-minded and old-fashioned as to even be thinking about Rudyard Kipling, or Virginia Woolf, please, or William Makepeace Thackeray. I don't need to read those people. I'm an expert in Sebald. I'm an expert in Marquez. You're not, though. You're not an expert in these people or in Calvino or anything like that. But it's a good gambit at places like that to do that, especially to people who look like me, because it tends to set them back on their heels. They tend to think, oh, I don't really know contemporary fiction as much as I should know it. I better lay off on praising, Emily Bronte. It's not many people, upon meeting me, are dumb enough to try that routine with me, but I realized after a long while that is not a good reason. That's a reason to resent those idiot Brooklyn hipsters, but it's not a good reason to resent these authors. Obviously, these authors need careful consideration because they tramped across the stage, and their earlier predecessors, American or non-American, I gave plenty of serious attention to. It's just the new Brooklyn faux literati that I hate so much, and that are a fairly new phenomenon that caused me to have a blind spot. So I asked around. I asked a couple of friends who don't do that, who love this guy, and they said they were in uniform. They don't know each other, and they were uniform as saying that Austerlitz is the book of his that I will like if I like any. So I just waited. I knew the Brattle would provide. I knew that sooner or later I would see a copy, and it turns out, not only did I find a copy, and not only does the copy have all those great clippings in it, his obituary, his book notices, all that sort of thing, but it's also carefully, lovingly annotated by someone who loved and yet was challenged by the book, and that helped a lot. I read it with company and liked it a lot more than I did the first time. So I'm glad I have it, although it doesn't really belong here now, does it? Oh, okay. All right, this is a UK trade paperback. I do so love my UK trade paperbacks. This is The Walking Dead by Gerald Seymour, who is called on the cover the finest thriller writer in the world today by the Daily Telegraph. He's totally unknown in America. And this book was terrific. Just terrific. Its main character, David Banks, is young enough and cocky enough and sure enough so that when he starts to realize that the black and white boundaries of what are the good guys and what are the bad guys have permanently blurred in the new world, it really rocks him. It doesn't send him out of his game, and it also doesn't make him cynical. Instead, I thought that his decisions, his development in this book was more interesting even than the high octane, usual thriller silliness that the author mocks together for the plot. So I really liked him. Really glad that I gave it a try. Okay, all right. This is by Anna Bennett. This is a debutante diaries novel. This is The First Earl I See Tonight. And there's a country house in the background. It turns out that a country house in the background plays an important part in this novel, because the main character is a nobleman who has a country house that's falling apart, and he doesn't have the money to fix it. And on the opposite side of the usual plot divide is a young woman who needs a husband right away in order to acquire her dowry, in order to get access to ready money. She assures the nobleman that their marriage can benefit them both and need not include love. And if you read Regency romance, this is a modern Regency romance. If you read Regency romances, you know the title characters are always striking that bargain, and it never works. It never works. It always worked in the actual Regency period, but in the Regency novels, it never works. Oh, great. Okay, I recommended this before. This is Amy Sargent King. This is Me and Marvin Gardens, a YA novel about a young boy who finds a thing, finds Marvin Gardens. He names him Marvin Gardens. Marvin Gardens is not a bear. He's not a warthog. He's not a pig. We don't really know what he is, but he eats plastic, and he likes it. and he's also affectionate in an odd, unique way. And the novel is really the story of their friendship, although it's also a story of environmentalism and heedless consumerism and all that good stuff that you want to be in a YA novel. This is such an ambitious YA novel, in the good old-fashioned sense of the word. It's not trying to shame you by the provinciality of your worldview. It's not trying to get you to check your privilege. Instead, it's trying to mimic what is the word? Dramatize a young person's discovery of larger issues in the world. That great way that great YA fiction does that, by you get a ringside seat in a young character learning the ways of the world, and maybe learning, in the best of them, that those ways are changeable. I just think it's fantastic. I hope that it's destined to be a classic. Okay, all right. Okay, this is Russell Kirk, Elliot and His Age. This is yet another book on T.S. Eliot by the founder of modern-day conservative thought, a gigantic windbag named Russell Kirk, who was also a fantastic writer. And boy, oh boy, does it show in this book. I have a few Eliot books, in addition to Eliot reprints of his work, and this is so much more eloquent than any of them. And I hate to say that, because one of them is by Dennis Donahue. But even so, boy, oh boy, it's no small surprise. Rereading the book, it was no surprise to me that Russell Kirk could sway so many young thinkers about conservatism. The odd thing in this, my second read through of this book, I read it when it first came out because of Kirk. I admit I didn't like T.S. Eliot at the time, but the odd thing when I read it the second time is that although it made me more appreciative of how Kirk swayed young people to conservatism, it did not sway me any more to Eliot. I was mainly paying attention to Kirk, not Elliot, in the course of the book. I don't know what that says about him or me, but okay, this is another novel. This is The Silent Death. It's a Gideon Rath murder mystery set in 1930s Berlin. The era of when silent film was dying, when the movie theaters when sound movies were taking over, and there's a murder and then a second murder, and in the classic murder mystery sense, they seem at first unconnected, but they are not. And I loved it. Not sure what it's doing here. Oh, it's right next to another murder mystery. This is The Mystery of the Cape Cod Tavern by Phoebe Atwood Taylor, which I found I got it on a lark. I found it at the Brattle and hadn't read any Phoebe Atwood Taylor in so long. So I read it and loved it. Now I'm on the lookout for all the others of hers in these cute little featherweight light hardcovers with dust jackets. I'm on the lookout for all of them, anything that I can find. Of course, I would probably find the whole lot of them if I went to Cape Cod. But as I've been learning in the last couple of days, that's not possible even if I were to bring Frida with me, unless I can find somebody with a car. Public transportation absolutely refuses to have anything to do with dogs. I'm surprised they even let you on if you've had any contact with a dog in the last day. Didn't used to be that way, but it is now. So if I'm going to travel to Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, I'm going to have to do it in the company of a long-suffering stranger. Oh, and speaking of Cape Cod, I just got this in the mail, I think last year. It's just a field guide to Cape Cod and the islands, to all the various wildlife that you will see there. I don't need it, obviously. If I'm not going to regularly go to Cape Cod, I don't need a field guide, but it was fun. It was fun to flip through the pages, and also to flip through the pages and sort of count how many of these creatures I have seen. It ends up being quite a few, because I've spent a lot of time on Cape Cod and the islands. Okay. Wow. All right. This is a paperback of Disappointment River by Brian Kastner, in which he follows Alexander Mackenzie's route along the riverways just of the North, and tries to follow as much of his method as possible, not just his itinerary. I loved it. I don't think I'm blurbed on this, but I'm glad to see that so many other people are, because it was a terrific book. And I think I just kept the paperback because I don't have the hardcover anymore. This is another paperback as well. Oh, great. All right. Yes, this was sent to me by Vintage. This is also a paperback of The Sparsholt Affair, which in its American hardcover dust jacket was hideous. Just hideous. In fact, it was so ugly in its American hardcover dust jacket that I bought the UK trade paperback from Book Depository. The UK trade paperback looked just fine. This looks even better than the UK trade paperback did, so I'm very glad it got a cover redesign, and now I have them both. Now I have two that are... Oh boy. All right. These next three are a set. I found these at the Harvard bookstore with Chris and Giselle probably a year ago. This is John Carter of Mars. 3 big trade paperbacks with multiple volumes each. So number 1 has, this is number 3. It has Swords of Mars, Synthetic Men of Mars, Lana of Gothal, and John Carter of Mars, the unfinished final book. Volume 2, there is John Carter and Deja Thoris. And this has Thuvia, Maid of Mars, Chessmen of Mars, The Mastermind of Mars, and A Fighting Man of Mars. And Volume 1 should have only 3. Yes, it does. Princess of Mars, Gods of Mars, and The Warlord of Mars. I couldn't resist. When I saw these three as a set, I just couldn't resist. I still have all of the old mass market paperbacks with the great Dowdecay Suite covers, but I wanted these as well. I couldn't resist. I knew that I'd be thinking about them forever if I didn't get them. This next one looks like a UK trade paperback. It is. This is Jamie O'Neill's At Swim Two Boys. One of the most linguistically challenging and fantastically intelligent gay novels I have read in my life. Just an amazing thing. When I see something like this, when I remember something like this, a gay novel like this, and then I see the hosannas of praise showered on things like Tin Man, I don't even know what to say to the 2 gay readers. I don't even know what to say. I mean, there's room for everybody at the table, but one is a plot sketched out quickly on a napkin, and the other is a serious Jamesian novel. I guess it takes all types of readers, but I myself much prefer to have more meat on the bone. So, in my books, I should say. This next one is also a UK trade paperback. This is The Waters of Eternal Youth by Donna Leone. This is one of her Venice murder mysteries. I love the whole series. I don't have any of them, I don't think, because I'd like them all in UK trade paperbacks. This is the only one I've ever come across. I guess I could go on Book Depository and get a bunch of them in UK trade paperbacks. I'd gladly do that because I like the feel, I like the heft, and I do reread these things. So maybe I'll look on Book Depository and see what's there. Oh God, okay. All right, this next one is The Return of the King. You wouldn't know that from the cover. This is this is a trade paperback of Return of the King with the movie covers. And that's what the cover looks like, because when I got this, the acetate film that had the words Return of the King, J.R.R. Tolkien, was peeling off. So rather than reinforce it with tape, I decided to peel it entirely off, and it gave me an almost naked cover. And the same thing is true. I don't know where it is. It might be nearby. I got the same thing. The same thing happened with the Fellowship of the Ring in this same format. The film of the lettering on the cover came right off, and I took it right off because I kind of prefer this. Although I do not need 10 different editions of Lord of the Rings. I do not need them. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. This is from, I think, earlier this year. This is Wings in the Light by David Lee Myers, a beautiful tribute to butterflies. Just a gorgeous thing all throughout. And the writing is really good, too. This is just a nature classic. And then, okay, all right, this also came to me in the mail. This is from earlier this year. And this is the ultimate cartoon book of book cartoons. It just has a whole bunch. It doesn't have all of my favorites. Some of the ones from, this is almost directed at me. Oh my. Some of the ones that some book cartoons that I really like from the New Yorker are not in here, for instance. But a lot of them are. So, I had a blast flipping through this. And the idea of getting cartoon books in the mail for free, boy oh boy, it's the American dream. And then, what is this last one? Oh, right, okay. I kept this. I didn't know what to make of it, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This is a Star Wars book. It's an oversized Star Wars book. It's Star Wars propaganda. And it is a series of posters from the Star Wars continuity. Not Star Wars posters from the movie theaters, but posters from inside Star Wars continuity. So we have, there's Chancellor Palpatine, do not bind his hands as we go onward to victory. And not only does the book grant him the authority he needs to assure total victory, and not only does the book show you these posters that are obviously fan-made, but it gives you the author's name, the artist's name, the fictional author, the artist's name. This is Vanthan Chasu. and a little detail about the about the history of the poster. All of it inside. See, there's another one for Chancellor Palpatine. Vote against the Military Creation Act. I didn't know what to make of this, and I still don't. It's a history of the Star Wars continuity told in the form of posters, and I loved it. I loved it. So, and I'm no Star Wars completist by any measure, but there you go. That is the first bookshelf, which we were helped right along by the fact there were no transverse books. So there are plenty of transverse books coming up, but that is the first shelf. So we're going to go on to the second one next time. So I'll stop this for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, Book 2.